Now, the Supreme Court of Appeal has ruled that the Judicial Services Commission must refer the guilty finding against Judge Nkola Motata for gross misconduct to Parliament. It ruled that the JSC was wrong to find Motata guilty of misconduct when the verdict should have been gross misconduct. Freedom Under Law is one organization that approached the SCA on this matter. Its chairperson, retired Judge Johann Kriegler, joins us now for reaction. Judge, thank you very much for your time here on eNCA. And a lot of people don't know that even when you're a retired judge, you're still referred to as a judge. And I guess this was your point in terms of a person who was found guilty of racism, etc., still keeping that title when you took this matter to the SCA.
Good afternoon to you, Maseko. Good afternoon to the viewers. Yes, of course, being a judge is an honor, but it's also a much greater responsibility to behave properly at all times. And it's in that context that one must look at the particular case that we were concerned with here.
Mm. And I mean, Judge, in terms of the fact that he was, for instance, found to have lied under oath when he was speaking about how intoxicated he was back in 2007 when he hit that brick wall, that's also, perjury. People have been found guilty of perjury. For instance, a certain former Minister of Social Development was also found guilty of perjury. Okay, that punishment was also quite different. But if you look at someone like Vicky Momberg, back in 2018 being found guilty of racism. She was sent to jail for 3 years. 1 year was suspended, but she spent time in jail. So a lot of people question where you need to be in society for you to get more leniency if a judge can be found guilty of the same crime, but only be, expected to pay 20,000 rand.
Maseko, you're quite right. But the case of Judge Motata is actually not really about Judge Motata. Superficially, yes. More fundamentally, this case that we brought to court first in Johannesburg and then in Bloemfontein when we lost in Johannesburg is about the Judicial Services Commission, a vital constitutional body that is to ensure the integrity of the judiciary. And it has not been doing its job. It's been abysmal in its failure to do the job. And that's the concern of this current judgment once again, where the Supreme Court of Appeal has to point out to the Judicial Services Commission that it is erred in the most fundamental respects, in respect of a fairly simple case, a straightforward case where a judge behaved disgracefully, manifesting not only contempt for the police and for women, but racism, crude behavior, and then lying about it. It was actually a very simple case. It took them 16 years, and in the end, only by 8 votes to 6 did they decide to send it to Parliament. It's the JSC that is really on trial here, and it is the JSC whose conduct has been found to be more constitutionally unacceptable than merely the disgraceful conduct of Judge Motata.
And I agree with you, Judge, because it makes the JSC look like a club of elite friends and colleagues, because this is mostly people who are in the law fraternity. So it's like presiding over your own colleague.
Exactly. Now, one knows that it's in the nature of a judge's job that you give decisions. You decide disputes between people, and therefore there's always, or normally, one person or one side that it is unhappy with the decision. So judges are targets of displeasure, and it is right and proper that they should be protected, and the independence of the judiciary should be protected. That's the one side of the JSC's job. The other side of the JSC's disciplinary job is to ensure that when judges have misbehaved, they are dealt with appropriately, firmly, transparently, obviously, publicly. That they failed in all of those respects in this particular instance, but it's not the only case. We produced a 100-page report in November last year, Freedom Under Law, in which we pointed out numerous mistakes, numerous failures to do their job. And it's deeply, deeply upsetting that the Supreme Court of Appeal should use strong language once again to tell the JSC, you must do your job. And they have failed once again. Quite frankly, the decision that the minority proposed in the JSC was the correct one. That 8 out of 16 members of that august body could come to the conclusion that they did is simply incredible. One cannot understand how lawyers who've taken an oath of office, lawyers who are supposed to be doing the protective job could come to such a conclusion. But so they did, yet again. It's the same as they've been doing in other cases, notably, notoriously, of course, the Sloper issue, which has also been dragging for more than a decade, with the JSC dragging its feet and fumbling and mumbling and coming to incorrect conclusions.
And Judge, this now goes to the National Assembly. They have to also vote. What are you hoping comes out of that? Are you hoping they use better knowledge in terms of the decisions that they'll take with regards to this case?
Masego, seeing how the trouble has been taken with the public protector's hearing, I am not optimistic. Impeachment proceedings before Parliament are obviously not straightforward. If the lawyers, if the lawgivers, if the parliamentarians, if the members of the National Assembly do their duty, it should be a straightforward case. It's a simple matter where a judge has misbehaved in a grossly improper manner and should be dismissed from office. It should be easy, but politics will obtrude, and nothing in which politics is involved is ever that simple. But let me say that I have confidence that our legislators will do their duty, although I have fears that politics may make it a little more tricky than one thinks it should be.
And this is something that the former President Jacob Zuma actually raised, to say, politicians are part of the process that appoints judges, and sometimes it is also just a conflict of interest here and there in terms of friends and people coming from the struggle together, etc. He raised it quite a couple of times. But just lastly, Judge, as a retired judge, what do you think overall of our judicial system in South Africa?
I think our judicial system is one of the bastions of the new South Africa. We've had lots of problems. We've got many institutions that have not functioned as we'd hoped they would. But the judiciary has stood firm. It is not infallible. It's made mistakes. It has, on occasion, obtruded a little into the field of competence of the other two organs of state. But by and large, the judiciary has been a steadying force in the new South Africa's path towards perfect democracy.
Thank you so much for speaking to us, retired Judge Johann Kriegler. He's the chairperson and founder of Freedom Under Law.